I'd like to officially open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilperson Everly.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A through K. Are there any questions from council on those meeting notes? If not, moving on to old business. The first one is an ordinance amending Chapter 42, Division 3 of the Rolla City Code pertaining to medical marijuana. Before we start on this, I'd like to maybe make an opening statement. And I think it's important for those here tonight, those watching on TV, understand exactly what's before the city council, why it's before the city council, and what's the process that has been used to date. In November of 2018, the state of Missouri passed the constitutional amendment, Amendment 2, which legalized the use of medical marijuana. And that was passed by a pretty sound margin. I think it was around 60-40. Amendment 2 allows the cultivation, infusion, testing, and dispensing of marijuana for medical purposes. The state is allowing local governments limited ability to enact regulations. We are limited to the time, manner, and location, but cannot present an undue burden for that dispensary or cultivation, whatever entity they are. So what's available to us is rather limited in scope. The process used today is the staff provided a draft ordinance a number of weeks ago in order to get the community discussions started. We also made arrangements to bring in an expert that was to enlighten us as to what the state statute was to date and what the amendment allows and doesn't allow. Council deliberated and sent it on to the planning and zoning as part of the normal process for land use regulations. Planning and zoning held a public hearing. They deliberated, they voted, and they sent to city council a recommended ordinance. 2 weeks ago, the city council also held a public hearing and deliberated the recommended ordinance from the planning and zoning, and that's what's in front of us tonight. The city council tonight has some options. They can pass or reject what's on the table in front of them. They could amend the ordinance. That amendment would take a motion, a second, and a simple majority of those council persons present tonight. Passing an ordinance will require 7 yes votes. If this ordinance as presented or as amended or modified does not pass, then we fall back on the state amendment ballot language, which in the case of the buffer is the 1,000 feet buffer from any daycare, church, or school. So that's the process that we've taken so far. Some of you here tonight may want to provide comments to the council. The two public comment periods, which is a long-held practice, has occurred, and the public comment period has closed. That said, City Hall has received 2 petitions, which I can read and place in the public record tonight. If anyone here has a petition, I can do that as well if you want to bring it forward. It has also come to our attention that a petition submitted 2 weeks ago and as part of the public record may have some inaccuracies and may have implied a consensus opinion by the downtown businesses. We will allow a representative to speak as to why that petition is perceived to be inaccurate and to state the current consensus opinion of the downtown. So I'll start by reading the petitions that we have at City Hall. The first one appears to be an online petition, and I will read it. Presented before you is a petition signed by citizens who are in support of allowing medical marijuana dispensaries to have a 300-foot or less buffer in the downtown area. These signatures represent citizens who understand that central access to a dispensary is paramount to our new rights under Amendment 2. These are the people that laws directly affect. The downtown area is a convenient and central location to have a medical marijuana dispensary. These people understand that Rolla's downtown is not owned by any one business or group, and in fact belongs to all of us in Rolla. There would not be a downtown without the folks who spend their hard-earned money in Rolla. Their voices are loud and should be heard alongside everyone else. Thank you for your time and efforts in recognizing the needs of the Rolla medicinal marijuana is one of the most regulated industries in our community. The people of Rolla ask that this industry be treated fairly and our rights as Missouri citizens not be tread upon. Thank you for your consideration. Dwyla Arnold, Celestial, Al Samrami, and Courtney Wright. This online petition has a total of 188 names on it. We obviously haven't been in a position to verify them, but self-reporting 71 of the 188 are listed as from Rolla. The rest are from far and wide, Kansas City, Indianapolis, and there's somebody in here from Canada. The second petition, and I don't know the source of this, but I, the undersigned, support the policy of a 500 to 1,000-foot buffer zone between a medical marijuana dispensary and any school, daycare, or church in Rolla. I am signing this petition because I do not want a medical marijuana dispensary near our children at daycare centers, preschools, schools, or churches. This has 92 names listed along with their addresses and contact information. 84 of them are self-reported as being from the city of Rolla. Other than the downtown, are there any other petitions that somebody would like to submit to the public record? Please come forward. I will be happy to read it. Oh, this is the same one as the one I just read.
Okay, this is the same one we didn't know.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Are there any others? If not, is there a representative from the downtown businesses that would like to come forward? Just in the mood of fairness, so we're going to limit the conversation to the perceived inaccuracies and what's the official position of the downtown businesses, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Kim Morgan, and I own the building at 116 Westgate Street and run my small business in downtown Rolla. There was a petition that was submitted by Councilman Schott.
Excuse me, Kim, could you speak up?
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a petition that was submitted by Councilman Schott that was listed as having, it says specifically, as an owner of a business in the downtown district of Rolla. And we think that there's some misinformation in that. Of the people that signed that, there are 3 businesses that are not located in downtown Rolla. One of them is actually located in Waynesville, Missouri. 2 of the people that signed, 2 of the businesses that signed were employees of a business, not the owner of the business. And 2 of them that signed are owners of business but did not understand exactly what they were signing. They have changed and they have now signed our petition asking for the 500 to 1,000 feet. There's more than 200 businesses in downtown Rolla, so that leaves 10 signatures. And we don't feel that that represents the downtown businesses. We have copies as well.
Thank you.
Before we proceed, David, since you've been identified as this being yours, do you have a comment, like to comment? Want to pass?
I'll pass.
Okay, thank you. What is the downtown position currently?
Do you want my name?
Yes.
My name is Katie Langston Combs, address 700 and 702 North Pine Street. Well, first of all, I did not only focus on downtown businesses. I definitely did talk to a majority of the downtown businesses, but then I also did reach out to many people in the community. So, and it goes in line with when you presented that had the 90 some odd petitions. It's the exact same wording. So I can just start and talk about that. So we are here to present a petition from members of the community requesting a 500 to 1,000 feet buffer zone between medical marijuana dispensaries and schools, churches, and daycares. After much research and debate, the state of Missouri authorized up to 1,000 feet buffer, and Rolla's Planning and Zoning recommended a 500-foot buffer. We are simply asking that you follow these recommendations. This petition we have presented to you, which we will in just a moment, has at least 319 signatures. It includes business owners downtown and all over the community, property owners, church members and directors, parents, teachers, daycare and preschool directors, who all want at least a 500-foot buffer, and many who have stated they want a 1,000-foot buffer. In addition to the petition, I'd like to briefly provide 3 items of information for your consideration. First of all, this petition in no way is against medical marijuana. Many people who signed this petition, including myself, agree that medical marijuana can help some individuals. We are not disputing that at all. This petition is only about the placement of a dispensary, and we are requesting 500 or more feet buffer. Second, a 500-foot buffer would not be an undue burden. With a 500-foot buffer, there are many outstanding eligible retail locations in Rolla, including the areas, in looking at the maps that John Butts, I think is going to present, or someone, it appears that areas around Walmart, Lowe's, JCPenney's, the Forum, and Westside Marketplace are all available. Third, and most important, this situation is unique. This is a brand new industry, and no one knows how it will go here in Rolla. Although we'd like to think of a dispensary as a pharmacy, it is not a pharmacy. A dispensary is still a facility distributing a federally illegal substance, and it seems very wise to take the cautious approach and approve at least a 500-foot buffer zone on the behalf of the youth in our community, especially when we can always revisit this later if we determine that we have been overly cautious. In regards to the downtown, you know, this is not just a downtown issue. This is an entire community issue. But in regards to the downtown and how the business and building owners feel on this issue, we have signatures of almost every business that's right on Pine Street and the building owners, in addition to other areas downtown that are all in favor of 500 feet or more. We have over 45 signatures of just business and building owners downtown. If the community wants a buffer of at least 500 feet away from children, think about how many children we have in our downtown. We have the Kaleidoscope Discovery Center, Fourth Dimension, the Boy Scout Shop, the Children's Library, a cupcake shop, and ice cream parlor. We host numerous events year-round to attract families to walk around downtown. Summerfest, Halloween, the Chocolate Walk, parades, Celebration of Nations, Arts and Crafts Festival, just to name a few. No other retail district has events like these to try to bring families and children to their area. If you are here in favor of a 500 to 1,000-foot buffer, please stand up with us if you're willing. And thank you for considering our petition. Yes.
A few questions. Could we actually have the opposite stand up, those that are in favor of under that?
If there's anybody outside that would like to put it in.
Okay. Thank you. And I have a few questions based on your petition. So you did go to all downtown business owners, is that correct?
I would not say that I went to every downtown business owner.
We didn't have enough time.
I did not have enough time. I did go to many,
Right.
and there are a few that chose to not sign, but just about every single one that I spoke with chose to sign.
Okay. One other quick question I had is just, are folks aware that there are other drug dispensaries downtown? Those would be alcohol dispensaries?
Yes, I think
So
people
people
are
are aware
aware.
that downtown there are drug
You know,
dispensaries?
but hold on. We don't need to be clap on either side of the positions here. Let's try to keep this professional.
Reasonable, yeah. I just want to point out that it seems a little hypocritical that we're going to pick and choose which businesses can and cannot operate in our downtown. Alcohol is considered a drug and it's very addictive. and we're allowing that downtown. There's a lot of problems that come with drugs like alcohol that I'll list probably later. But I just want to point that out that sounds like we're concerned about our kids. There's only a 100-foot buffer between alcohol and our children right now. So if that's a concern for folks, I'd like to hear that voiced just as much as this, because it seems like we're singling out things like cannabis, which is a less addictive and has a plant medicine. So those are my 2 points I wanted to say, and thank you for your time in presenting that.
I do have a question
For them or John?
for them.
Okay, please do, Daniel.
Okay, just a quick question. I do want to point out to the folks in downtown that while it is really super important for us to make sure that this medicine does not get into the hands of children, the state of Missouri has put out more regulations and the strictest regulations that I've ever come across in any industry that I've ever seen. So what I'd like to make the point there that if that's the concern, that we're worried about children being exposed to this medicine, I would point out that when these dispensaries open, the black market goes away. The gray market goes away. It definitely lessens. People will get their medicine from a legal and viable option. The state of Missouri has given plenty of rules and regulations, including security and strict security. So that's what I like to say about that. I don't see that happening with a lot of the stuff. I know that we celebrate things like St. Pat's and Summerfest, and I see a lot of drinking, a lot of fights, a lot of violence, but we're not screaming about that, and I'm not sure why we're being unfair as a community. That's what I've got.
Okay, thank you very much. John, why don't you take us, you want to start with the map? Council asked about other locations,
Yeah, that's
or you want to
probably is
introduce
good.
the subject for other points?
No, I think you've covered it with a great overview. As we went through planning and zoning, they made a couple of changes just to the spacing, which was initially proposed at 300 foot, but taken at 500 foot. They also changed the time that's listed in the draft ordinance. So that's from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week rather than extended hours on the weekends. So the map that we have on your screens, I think maybe folks in the audience can see them here. We've also got blown up copies of those maps out in the lobby. There's just no convenient way of putting them inside. Identifies to the degree we can, and we use things like the 2019 Faith Directory. We used licensed daycares from the state of Missouri, schools that we're aware of. We identified those on a map and placed them at a 500-foot increment throughout the community. It does show that there are lots of areas along our, what I would call our primary commercial corridors, things like South 63, certainly the West Side Marketplace, Rolla West area. There's some pockets along Highway 72. Limited areas on 10th Street, some narrow margins. A little bit of areas in the north side of the Forum Plaza area, and then areas as you go north on 63. So there are adequate C2 and C3 zones, but as we explained really in the conversation with P&Z, 500 foot, in essence, takes out what we think of as the central city district, CC district for the city, which really think of Rolla Street, Pine Street, Even Oak. There are some areas right around the periphery of that that actually would still meet that definition of being outside of a 500-foot buffer. So I don't want to imply that in walkability of the downtown there are no areas. I think that there would be some limited pockets. So that is the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission along with the change in times. One of the things we did discuss there was the appropriate zoning uses. What was in the recommendation by staff and by the commission was to allow the dispensaries as a conditional use in C2, a by right use in C3, and a by right use in our central city district, subject to the limitation of spacing. And that didn't get a whole lot of discussion. I think they were comfortable with that. We do allow currently pharmacies to be a conditional use C1, by right use in a C2. And just for the audiences, the difference is a conditional use means the applicant has to go back through the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. There's not a guarantee that in a C2 zone they would be granted that license or that rezoning or that conditional use, but a by right use would permit it as long as the setback was met. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the map or what we prepared as a result of that. But again, the details are out in the lobby, and we'd be happy to put these on the city's website. I should also mention that the 500-foot spacing is from the building proper and not the property themselves. So just the same 100-foot spacing on liquor establishments goes from building corner to building corner. We apply that same principle here.
Council deliberations. Daniel?
Okay, I have a question with the C2. So, with this medical marijuana, the state is saying that in order for a person to put in these licenses, they have to identify their buildings and all that first. So in order to do that, in order to put forth that kind of money that an investment like that would take, they would need to have prior permission, and I'm not sure that that mechanism allows for that.
Not in C3. In C3 is by right. C2 would require them to get a conditional use permit.
That's what
If you keep it as conditional C2.
That's why I see a problem with the conditional use for C2, is because it just doesn't allow the mechanism for that to even happen, because the state requires you to have that building before you ever put the application in. So I would assume that that just wouldn't make sense to apply to C2.
I just want to piggyback on that, just in the sense of the C2 thing, because it's the same topic. Looks like community is asking for some buffer zone, and it looks like 300, 500, or 1,000 feet either zones out the majority of downtown or all of the downtown, depending. We only had 2 areas that we suggested, that staff suggested we put these. That would be CC or C3. If we zone out completely CC or the majority of CC, I'm concerned about that. And I'm
Just to correct you,
Yep.
staff did recommend conditional use C2 as well.
conditional use C2, but
Yeah,
my concern is that it would need to be by right. So I think that if we are going to look at having a buffer zone, that we should make the C2 as a
By right.
as a by right, as a compromise to the fact that we pretty much are getting rid of the majority or all of our downtown. I just wanted to make that comment.
Other council comments or questions?
So, I've got something. So, at the last meeting, I indicated that I was in favor of sticking with the original staff work that the city had done for the 300 feet. And personally, I still feel like that's adequate. I think the laws that the state has come up with are pretty strict and are good enough to keep it out of the hands of our kids where we don't want it. However, this afternoon, let me start again. My phone and my email has blown up over this, as I'm sure everyone's has. And my ward was pretty strongly in one particular area. And they made that fact well known to me. I'm aware that most of the time people who are for something don't usually call in passionate defense of their position. But nevertheless, I got a lot of calls and a lot of emails from my ward that wanted to do at least a 500-foot buffer, if not the 1,000-foot buffer. And it's important to me to listen to the people of my ward. So this afternoon, I spent all afternoon on the internet researching and looking for reports, studies, anything that could help me understand what other communities have gone through in the country as they have struggled with this. And what I found was that, like us, almost everyone that has done this has gone through some growing pains and has had a lot of folks that are on one side and a lot of folks on the other side. So there's really no clear path forward. But I did find out in looking through the vast amount of stuff that's out there that it seemed that the communities who were most successful in making medical marijuana available to the folks who need it and keeping it out of the hands of those who we don't want to have it were those who spent a lot of time, like a year and a half of time, talking in the community, making sure that folks were on board, getting ideas from everywhere. And I realize we don't have that much time. So the other thing that I was able to glean from what I looked at was that the communities that seemed to be most successful in the long run were also those who either took a stepwise approach or started out a lot more conservatively than I would have thought. And so with the information I received from my constituents and from what I learned, it makes me more comfortable in being a lot more conservative than I would be if I were voting for myself. So there's a lot of stuff out there. You can find something that supports whatever point of view you want to have. But it, like I said, it seemed like the communities that had the most success were ones that started fairly conservatively. And that resonated with me, even though that's not my personal viewpoint. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you for that. Daniel?
In response to that, everyone knows I support a zero buffer because I don't think that there should be access. I don't think that there should be a buffer between patients and their access. We don't do that to the other medicines, and folks that choose a healthier plant-based medicine should not be treated unfairly. I do agree that the community is asking for a buffer. I would go so far as to say that I've also gotten a lot of calls on both sides of the fence, some supporting 0, some supporting 1,000, some supporting most, and it seems from the Rolla Downtown Business Association, everything are screaming out for 500 feet. I think that there's a compromise to be had. I think there's a compromise between no buffer and a completely over-restrictive buffer of 500, which buffers out our downtown area, which is the most central access point for these folks that need this medicine. And when I say need this medicine, I'm not talking necessarily about the back pains and the leg cramps and even some of the others. I'm talking about the folks that are going to be allowed to choose medicine like this over opioids, which are destroying our community. And we're looking at a part of the puzzle here to kick that to the curb in our community and save lives. And I cannot, even for a second, stand by over-restriction of people's ability to take care of their own health care. I know that's a huge point for folks, health care. Well, this is how some of us choose to do it. This is how some of us choose to do it. We don't all go to the doctor and get your back pain pills or go to the pub and drink your scotch or whatever it is that you're doing to help alleviate yourself and make yourself better at the end of the day. Some people choose a plant-based medicine called marijuana. It's not fair to treat these people unfairly. In fact, our Amendment 2, asks us specifically, prioritizes for us what we're supposed to look at. My job today is to listen to everybody in this room and to take those phone calls and those emails and make a decision. Also part of my job is what the Constitution now tells me to do, and that's to make this decision based on access to that medicine. And what I can tell you is that if you put it on the outside of Rolla, that's not access. I can't get a wheelchair across 63 and 72 easily. I can't get across town if I don't have a vehicle because I can't drive because of my Parkinson's or my MLS or any of those things. Some people don't want to go out there and have to chase this down because we already voted that it's here. It's among us. It's in our community because we chose that. An overwhelming 60-something% here chose to not treat this medicine unfairly. And for us to go forth with anything other than access and our patients and our communities and our children in mind is a problem. I don't see an ability for me to vote in anything other than either a compromise for those patients and you folks in the Downtown Business Association or 0. I see a compromise here. What I don't see is telling these patients that they can't get to their medicine, and that's what we're essentially doing. Sure, there's a pocket here and there's a pocket there, but that's not how we invite industry and business into Rolla. We don't say, well, you can come right over here or you can come right over here. This is about access to medicine. We need to be in the heart. I look at this map, and the area that I see that needs it the most is buffered out at 500 feet. I see a compromise.
Thank you. Jimmy Hill?
I don't know where we're going with this, and all I can say is that marijuana has been available for 25 years by a doctor's permit. Why are we just now making it be medical marijuana now? You know, you talk about people with cancer, stuff like that. I've got cancer. I'm going through it again. You know what I take for pain? I take Advil. I don't need drugs to make me go the other way with it.
Jimmy, you take 13 Advil, you're going to find out how strong those are, my friend.
I take 2 Advil a day if I take any. So don't sit over and tell me I take 13, son.
Don't sit over and tell me Tylenol's not a
Well,
drug.
the whole thing is what it boils down
Stay on
to.
topic.
Sir,
Let's stay on topic.
I'm staying on topic.
Okay.
I don't like to say I'm a crybaby because I've got cancer. Well, that's a big deal. There's a lot of people out there that are a heck of a lot worse than what I am, you know. And I feel sorry for them, and they're in my prayers on a daily basis. But also, we have business people in this town have received threats because of this incident. And that's not going to go.
Point of information. Has that been talked about? Who got threatened?
I've heard it. Hasn't been officially reported. That I don't know.
That's just what I said. I said it's been mentioned, sir. And I'm hoping that it doesn't happen. I hope that it was an innuendo that was put out there that is not true, because that's not necessary. And it won't be allowed in this town either. But if you want to go with the 500 feet, that's fine. But I received a call from a gentleman who is a pharmacist, who is retired. And he says it should go through a pharmacy because it is a drug. He's been in medicine for all of his life, just about. There's a gentleman here that has been a pharmacist that's here tonight. That could attest to that. But gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we better make sure that it's attested to, that it don't get to our kids, because that's where it's going. Because they will upgrade our brands of marijuana to where it is more dangerous. You're more addictive to it as it goes along, and everybody knows it. So I just say that if we're going to do it, let's keep it at the 500 feet.
You did mention the pharmacies, and what are the pharmacies? They're 0, correct? I think they're 0 feet. Here's the thing. Pharmacies dispense opioids. We're not talking about what pharmacies do. We're talking about what marijuana dispensaries do, and they dispense marijuana. Now, the state has already put out all the guidelines that we need to follow for all that, and I'm not going to harp on security, and that these children don't have access. Everyone keeps talking about the kids. I am the first person to stand up and say that cannabis should not be shared with children unless under a doctor's supervision, which our Missouri Constitution does allow. Now, I would expect that the folks that are out here in our community would have already educated their children, because Amendment 2 is here. We are implementing currently. August 3rd, people will start building these dispensaries. We need to make sure that we treat this with proper information, that we're not miseducating our community by saying things like, marijuana is going to destroy our children when it comes out of a medical marijuana dispensary. That just doesn't make sense to me. Now, I feel for anybody that has any of those ailments, and that's why that medicine is here for those folks. You choose Tylenol, some people don't. Their health care dictates through them that they're going to choose cannabis to help, and it's proven time and time again to help with not just cancer, but the entire list of ailments that Missouri has now given us. These are our new rights. We have to come to terms with it. There's just no other way. As a community, buffering it out of our community is not what we're here for today. We're here to look at access and to make sure that we prioritize that. And when I look at the map at 500 feet, I don't see us prioritizing access for even a second. Not even a second.
David?
I have some prepared comments I'd like to read, just in relation, especially to the education piece of this. So we know that 32 other states in the nation have instituted this idea of medical cannabis. state after state continues to do so. Would states continue to do so if negative effects were the outcome? I highly doubt it. We know that this industry will be highly regulated. You will have to go to a state licensed doctor. The doctor will have to give you a prescription. You will have to have a condition such as cancer, epilepsy, glaucoma, migraines, seizures, Parkinson's disease, Tourette syndrome, PTSD, hepatitis C, inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, Huntington's disease, autism, neuropathies, sickle cell anemia, agitation of Alzheimer's disease, or wasting syndrome. You will go to this dispensary where you have an ID card that is checked upon entry. You will be helped one-on-one in a private area with an attendant. All of your previous information will be kept in a database, allowing the employees to know exactly how much medicine you are allowed each month and how much you have previously purchased. After your purchase, you will need to take the medicine to your private residence before consuming anything. The dispensary is not a place to consume the medicine. I believe the long-term previous stigma associated with cannabis, as well as the difficulty in attaining it, forced people to go to drug dealers is what has given cannabis a bad name. As I have mentioned before, even something like Tylenol would be a gateway drug if someone had to go to get it from a drug dealer. On the other hand, let's review some of the substances in our community that truly do pose a threat. There is an opioid crisis raging in our community and many others around the nation. According to the data collected in 2017, there were 70,000 people in America killed by overdoses. 47,000 of those were directly attributed to opioid use. The pharmacies in our community have been ground zero for the opioid crisis, with clear studies done showing that especially lower income and rural communities like ours were preyed upon by the industry in order to overprescribe an extremely addictive drug. What has the community of Rolla decided is the proper distance between opioid dispensaries, which are pharmacies, which created the crisis, and churches and schools? Answer, 0. Let's look at another substance, this one a recreational drug, that is available all over town in many different locations and is even celebrated in many festivities throughout the year. Alcohol. In 2014, 88,000 Americans died from alcohol-related causes. Alcohol causes lowered inhibitions, poor social judgment, trouble concentrating, loss of coordination, loss of judgment, dulled perception, mood swings, raised blood pressure, and passing out. This is a drug that we allow to be consumed on site in our downtown at many different types of alcohol dispensaries. There are even times that people exit these establishments and are aggressive or violent, or even worse, get in their vehicles and drive home. What has Rolla decided is the proper distance for an establishment dispensing this drug from churches and schools? 100 feet. We all must do some critical thinking about this. I believe we should be focused on the crisis that opioids, alcohol, and other seriously addictive drugs are causing in our community. We have decided to focus on a plant medicine that has few side effects compared to conventional pharmaceuticals and causes few, if any, of the negative consequences associated with the examples above, including 0 known cases of overdose-related deaths. As with any crisis, recognizing the true nature of the problem is a must before the community can actually solve it. Vilification of cannabis just creates unfounded fear, which creates a distraction from the real destructive and addictive drugs in our community. Sending the message to our citizens, especially our children, that they should greatly fear cannabis while alcohol and opioids are virtually harmless is very dishonest. In effect, that is what we're saying when we stir up unfounded fears and make cannabis difficult for patients to access through our zoning or any other method. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
so I gotta admit, I've been on council 4 years, and this is probably one of the toughest decisions that I've been asked to do, and I think most of us have been asked to do. Sorry, I see you may be having trouble hearing me.
No, I'm not.
Okay, sorry. When I ran for city council, I ran because I had concerns about the representation I'd been receiving in terms of how the council member viewed property rights in this town. And I had Walmart coming on my back door, basically. And I was concerned what that would do to my property, my lifestyle. I was worried about lights, all hours of the night, things like that. And so that motivated me to run when I felt like my council member wasn't representing me in my interest. Similarly, today, we've heard a number of people who are very concerned about property values. They might be right, they might be wrong. Just as important, we've heard a lot of people who are fearful for the children and the people they know. It's interesting, this debate, it seems like everybody's heart's in the right place. We all want to protect our property and help those that we love. Some believe marijuana is the right answer, some believe it's the wrong answer, and we're all making assumptions one way or the other based on our preconceived notions and beliefs. The problem with assumptions is it could be right, it could be wrong. And I think if we don't know if we're basing our decisions off of assumptions, then we should perhaps, as Councilmember Everly suggested, wait. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to wait. But if we are wrong and we create no buffer or a little buffer, we live with that decision. There's probably no going back. If we create a buffer and we are right, then we have the buffer. If we create a buffer and we're wrong, we can eliminate the buffer. So for those reasons, with respect to everyone and the conditions that they're going through, I think everyone's heart's in the right place. We're just trying to get there differently. But as I've said, I think a buffer is appropriate in this case. And because I ran, at least in part, on protecting property, but I also believe in protecting people, and I don't believe that a buffer will prevent people from getting marijuana, I support the recommendation from Planning and Zoning.
Thank you. I have a comment to add. In all these weeks, very few people ask me my opinion on the matter. But then I don't have a vote, so I can understand that. But I did try and engage with everybody as to, think like a manufacturing company, get down to the root cause. What is somebody really having angst about? And there is a lot of support for medical marijuana for all the reasons that have been said here. And in the county, it did pass 60-40. So that's not where the angst is coming from. So where is it? And what I found is, it's human nature, fear of the unknown. And there's a lot of things we don't know yet. And just some of the things that I've heard, and I'm not passing judgment on these either way. Nationwide, there's a lot of big money behind this. And big money is pushing this, and most people believe that medical marijuana is a means to an end. The end is recreational use. That's where the money is, and that's where the money wants to go. We talk about that this is a highly regulated venture by the state. I personally don't feel too comfortable about being in a database because they're hacked every damn day of the week. So that doesn't give me personally much comfort, but for pharmacies, doctors, opioids are all supposedly well-regulated, but every day in the newspaper we read that something's getting sold out the back door left and right. So people are saying, if that happens with opioids and other medicines, tell me why it's not going to happen with medical marijuana. There's concern about if and when recreational marijuana comes. Are those dispensaries now going to be able to flip over and sell recreational marijuana? And we worked very hard to get the tattoo parlors out of downtown. Are we going to supplant them with now, no offense, sir, with recreational use downtown? We don't know how many dispensaries we're going to have. We may have one, we may have two, in which case there's plenty of areas for them. We may have 10, in which case more areas are in fact needed. I hear the comment that there are no pharmacies downtown now. So if people need medicine, somehow they're getting to Sinks and Walmarts or Walgreens and CVS. So what is the compelling reason to have them downtown? And then there's the debate. So for every person that says this is a way to get off of opioids, there's another person that believes that marijuana is a gateway to other drugs. I'm not a subject matter expert, so I'm not passing judgment on that. So again, it's not necessarily my opinion, but everyone that I talk to seems to prefer a more methodical approach. Start with the conservative position of 500, a year, 2 years down the road, these dispensaries are up and running, people get warm and fuzzy and comfortable with them, then it can be relooked at. So that's the consensus of the opinions that I've heard. Any other comments?
Like this question.
Jacob.
What's the timeline for if we want to go and revisit this at some point?
It's to be decided. There's nothing, I mean, you could preset it and pick a date out in the future, but whenever the future council wants to relook at it, I guess.
Okay. Another question. Do we have any approximate number of storefronts that are currently open for rent in the C2, C3?
We have plenty of real estate people here. I don't know that I want to put them on the spot, but I'm sure for the right rent, they'll all have a spot for you. But if somebody does want to take a stab at that answer, I think there's storefronts available, but again, I'm not an expert.
Well, my concern would be we pigeonhole them into a small number of slots, and that could create a market distortion, rent them out of the neighborhood.
Well, again, it goes back to how many we're going to have. If we're only going to have 1 or 2, or if we're going to have 10. I don't have the answer to that. Rachel?
And then the question that I have, kind of following up on what Jake asked, is sort of, if we're thinking of it currently as stated that C2 is not going to be a by right, but a conditional use, then we're only looking at the red spots on the map, in essence, or those are the ones that if somebody, say, we're planning to put in a license, those would be the only places they could look at right now, unless it was a by right? Do I understand that right?
Unless C2 is made a by right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't mean that somebody still couldn't go through the process, but I think the concern is fair.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
uncertain outcome to go through a conditional use process, which would have to be done prior to filing your application with the state.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but council has that option tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
To amend that, yeah.
So one of the potential amendments you have would be to make it C2 by right. David?
I want to kind of piggyback on those comments, which is that if we decide to go, especially if we decide to go 500, we are taking away the CC, which was previously proposed with C3. So I agree that I think if we go that route, we really need to look at doing the C2 as a by right. The second thing I just want to bring up as something that I think businesses that are looking to go into this have to think about is we also have something about 500 feet between dispensaries. If we're already sending them away from our churches and schools, if 2 dispensaries wanted to be near Walmart or near Big Lots or near Price Chopper, the 500 does become a little bit of a difficulty for them. I know there's going to be kind of a rating system of who gets the permit first and who gets which location, but it does seem difficult that if you need to have a building either purchased or ready to rent, when you turn your application in, if we have a 500 distance also between 2 dispensaries, we're creating a difficult burden for a dispensary to know even what another dispensary might do. So I just want to mention that if we do consider going as far as 500, I think it's extremely important to make C2 a by right and to limit the 500. We're already getting it away from our schools. Let's let the market do what it needs to in terms of, we don't do anything like that for any other businesses in town where we say you can't have 2 gas stations next to each other, 2 shopping centers. That happens based on competition. So I'd like to see, if we are going to go in that direction, that those 2 things will be considered. In fact,
You have that ability tonight to make that amendment as well.
I'd be willing to make those 2 motions. I don't know if you'd better separate or together, but
I do them separate.
So I'd be willing to make the motion that we do C2 as a by right. So on this map, we'd be looking at the blue and the red, which is still majority along our main 63, 72, and 44.
Second.
There's a motion and second to amend the ordinance to allow C3 and C2 by right
With the 500 foot.
with the 500 foot.
clarify, it automatically stays at 500 because that's not part of the amendment.
Right.
So, but I want to make clear that everybody understands.
I got you.
There could be, we're doing separate amendments, so each amendment would be done one at a time.
Right, so a subsequent amendment could address that, so it's not guaranteed.
Just so that you understand that that's not some kind of compromise, that we're going to keep it at 500, but we're going to do this. I mean, you can make those deals, but that's not part of
It's
this
not,
motion.
it's not on the table. So there's a motion and second to make we're talking about the dispensaries, right?
Dispensary, yeah.
Dispensaries by right, C2.
Correct.
All in favor, let's do it by show of hands.
Can I have a question first?
Oh, yes.
Is there anything in the law that talks about distance from residential
No.
zoning? Okay. That's all I need.
Not in Amendment 2.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay, so all in favor of that amendment, please raise your hand. All against? Let the record show 2.
So I would
Any
make
other
a
amendments?
second motion that we consider eliminating the 500 between dispensaries. So that would allow competition in these places along the C2s and C3s, arterials that are outside of the city center, to be, competition lets that. So we take away the 500 between dispensaries and let the marketplace do its job.
And just to clarify that, that's section 42-233.01, subsection F, as the spacing of 500 feet. So it would be to motion them to remove that provision.
To remove the
from ordinance.
provision F.
Second.
There's a motion and a second.
Can I make a
Yes,
comment on this one? So in my research this afternoon, I did find out that there were some communities that had done what we were thinking about doing, where they separated the dispensaries so that they were not close to each other on purpose. There were other communities that did the exact opposite and actually made a sort of a cannabis zone in and of itself, where they put all of the cannabis-related businesses together. So there have been examples across the country of different communities doing it different ways. So we would not be out of line doing it either way.
Okay, there's a motion. Question?
I have a question, and, you know, a lot of the argument I've heard from some of the council members has been, you know, accessibility. And I get the idea of competition, and I like that. But how do we make it more accessible by putting them next to each other?
I don't think we necessarily do that, but we also allow the businesses that are getting set up to choose locations right now that they don't know. Somebody else might try to put one somewhere and they might be putting it right next to them, and now they're in a location where they purchased a building that's right next to somebody else who's also going for a license. I just think we're creating undue, if we're already putting the 500 buffer around the schools and churches, I just feel like we're kind of creating an undue burden, an extra burden on top of that 500 to then have to figure out, where is that person going to put their dispensary versus me, and then that makes it harder for them to set up a business.
Yeah, they're not communicating. So.
Right, they're not communicating between each other.
So there's a motion second. All in favor of eliminating the buffer between dispensaries? All those for, raise your hand. All against, for the record? Let the record show 2 against. Any other motions?
I would not feel like I showed up tonight and did my job if I did not stand on the fact that I believe that access to this medicine is the most important thing that I know some of these folks in this room are here to see tonight. I believe that we can come to a compromise better than a 500 buffer. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't think that's going to happen. I think Amendment 2 was rushed into our laps, and unfortunately it didn't come with a giant packet of education. So that leaves it in just a few people's laps to try and help everybody get on board with what Missouri's looking at. In the spirit of that, I have to make a motion to make the buffer zone between dispensaries, schools, and churches 300 feet.
Is there a motion made? Is there a second? The motion fails for lack of a second. Any other motions? If not, Lance, will you read the final amended motion?
I mean, ordinance.
You could do that, too.
An ordinance amending Chapter 42, Article 3 of the City of Rolla ordinances of the City of Rolla, Missouri regarding medical marijuana.
Move ordinance passed.
Second.
Motion made and second. Roll call vote.
Henry,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
yes. Thank you. Williams,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Muse,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Ruder,
Yes.
11 ayes.
The ordinance is approved. This was a, we can clap again.
No, everybody's happy, I hope.
Look, this was, I think Daniel said it best, this was thrown in our lap. There's not a lot of precedent. The state has been writing, when the state went to the voters, they did not have all this worked out, so they've been writing the rules on the fly. I think it was important to show the vote, a unanimous vote. I think that shows compromise on the part of council persons and the people that represent. I think the citizens have been very passionate on both sides, and I think that's important. And I think there's been a lot of people that have knocked on doors and made phone calls and came to the meetings. And that's really important. And at the end of the day, we need to just think about how many people in the world do not have the opportunity that we do here in our form of government. So
Yeah.
with that, we move on and we start the
Mayor.
healing process.
Mayor,
Yeah.
may I make a short statement?
Yes, you may.
Seems there's some confusion in the community as to whether I was allowed to legally or ethically vote tonight. I'm a part-time employee at Peace of Mind, a retail shop on Pine Street. For those that need to know it, the law states that if I held a significant interest in Peace of Mind, I would be unable to vote tonight. The fact is this, significant interest is defined as a 10% owner or more. I hold no ownership or plans to have any type of ownership in Peace of Mind or dispensary. My plans do not include owning a dispensary. I believe the confusion here has come from my passion for advocating cannabis as a medicine. I believe the people of Rolla should have access to a non-toxic alternative to the opioid epidemic our pharmacies and our pharmaceutical companies have ushered into our community. My passion is not motivated by money, but by the healing and compassion. To silence my vote because I have a passion for championing a cause would be an ethical mistake. We do not silence people in America simply because they believe in something. That's why I voted tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry? Yeah. Those of you that want to stay for the RMU presentation are very welcome. Stay in your seats. Rodney's going to offer a price break for everybody.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Hey, game. Appreciate you coming up, man.
No, they're not.
Hey, look,
Hey, Tim, thanks for coming. And congratulations.
Good, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Have a great day.
Don, I thought for sure you'd stick around. I thought for sure you'd stick around. Just for old time's sake. Good seeing you, Don.
And you know, if you don't
Yeah. Is it good exchange for the? Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I've wondered if somebody might open up.
Ronnie, don't think for a minute you're not gonna get any questions.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm gonna get mine out here, though.
People to keep it shorter than
Huh?
normal. I've been told by multiple people to keep it shorter.
You get
None of us read the rest of that.
In the meeting adjourned.
Well, now that you mention it, I think you're right. Okay, special presentation, RMU quarterly report. Rodney?
All right, thank you very much. Again, our full presentation is on our website. It has all this information, so I'm going to summarize some of it. But this is the meeting where, by city ordinance, RMU is required to do an annual rate comparison with utilities in the county area. I'll have that information later in the back. And then, if time allows me, talk a little bit of some changes coming on rates that the board is starting to talk about. Again, just kind of a normal standard stuff. Again, adding the comparative rate information at the end. If you look at our financials, again, I'm just going down to the bottom line, comparing this year with last year, and on our net income, which is just our operating income, we're currently at a positive 6 months through the year, a positive $345,000 on our bottom line. Again, it's been mainly due to a sustained cold winter time.
So Rodney,
Yes.
just in keeping with my $50,000 thing, on our page 4, you have 2017 and
Yes, ma'am.
2018.
I did see that when I was.
Somebody did read her packet. Good job.
Just saying.
I also got that in the main
I
report.
see on the screen here, it's right.
I fixed it on here, but I did see it as, there was an error on our report that we handed out. Again, I'm going to move past the electric and water, just in the essence of time.
Oh, no. Go back to the water.
Sure.
The comparative rate study?
No, that's at the end. That's at the end. I'll come to that. And again, there's a lot of information in the report on miscellaneous items. I do want to mention the Grain Belt Express project, how that turned out at the end of the legislative session. The bills that were introduced and some amended bills stalled on the Senate calendar in the last day of session. So with no action taken on those bills, effectively that legislation died for now. I haven't had a whole lot of talks with the developer of the project. It's our hope that they get moving forward. But I can tell you they're already preparing for next year's legislative session as I speak. So so it's not without. I think we've had a good success. I think we're very important to recognize the savings that could be coming not to just Rolla's way, but to 360,000 Missourians in the state if the project is successful. But there probably still be some hurdles and obstacles going forward on this project still. And I think I'm just going to move on to talk about rates. And again, there's a lot of information in our packet, but I encourage you to go back. So, the ordinance, we're required to do a comparison study every year. We put that information, we make a request to utilities within a 60-mile radius about a couple months ago, trying to get their information on if their consumer used so much power, so much water, what would their bill be? But I think it's important to recognize that it's not just about what you pay for your utilities, it's about what you get in return for your payment. And so I want to talk a little bit, again, for a lot of council have seen this presentation before. I haven't changed it a whole lot, but normally when people think about electricity and water supply, they think about drinking water, doing the dishes, flipping light switch on, getting what they get. At RMU, we think about more than just drinking water, showers, bathtubs, those types of things. We think about fires. We think a lot about fires. And we think about outages. We think about how to be prepared, how to make sure that energy, that water is delivered safely, reliably. We have enough capacity. We have enough, all the things that are required to make sure that service is available to our customers. So it's not just about flipping on a light switch. There's a lot of things going on in the background, services that we're doing, irregardless of how much of that product you consume. So again, what I'm talking about, drinking water, we are concerned about our age of water mains, the size of the water mains, making sure we have adequate fire protection, adequate storage, wells, reliable equipment, materials in stock. I can't tell you how many times we have other utilities call us and ask us if we have a repair clamp, other things to fix their system. It's important you keep that kind of material in stock if at all possible. And of course, our skilled and trained staff. Electric department, it's the same type of thing. Capacity, reliability, safety, planning for the growth of the city, specialized equipment we have, materials, and again, a very highly qualified trained staff. So what are we doing? As we're doing, you can see us working on Whitney Lane, Wakefield Drive, Dover, Fox Creek. Right now, we're increasing, we're not just replacing water mains that are in trouble, we're improving the size. We're increasing the size of those water mains to make sure we have fire flow. So if we only had to do the town and not provide fire protection, we probably could do everything with 4-inch water mains. Because we're providing fire protection, we're providing an increased level of service. Our largest mains we install in town are 16 inches, and mainly trunk lines between water towers. We could use smaller flush hydrants. We won't have fire hydrants, so we'd have flush hydrants. Instead, we have larger fire hydrants with steamer connections to make sure the fire department, when they hook on with their biggest pumpers, they can pump the water out of our system. Storage and wells. So we again, just comparisons to tank sizes. We make sure our tank sizes are adequate. We actually have more storage than a town our size typically would have. Of course, larger substations, modern equipment, and again, very trained and highly skilled staff. And again, make sure we have materials on hand. If you drive by our facility, you'll see water pipes stacked up, poles stacked up, and a lot of stuff that you can't see that's in our warehouse. So again, just kind of give you an illustration on the water side. This is a picture of one of the Rolla fire trucks back in the 50s, 60s, I think it's the 60s. Again, we had the equipment could only pump so much water, so a small hydrant with a couple 2.5-inch nozzles was adequate because the fire truck could only pump so much water out of it. And those times have changed. I think just a month or so ago, the chief had their new fire truck out. It can pump on, I think, pushing 2,000 GPM, I think is what I remember him saying. We're trying to make sure we can provide fire hydrants adequate to do that. So again, our times of change applications are greater. So what we want everyone to understand is what we're providing for the prices that we charge, or the rates we charge, safe and reliable water supply, expanded, more reliable power system. We have a Class 1 ISO rated water system in outstate Missouri. That's the best rating you can have on the water system. So in outstate Missouri, we think that's a fantastic thing. We have staff on duty 24 hours a day. We respond quickly and effectively. And then water and electric supply, one key to economic development. Again, when a developer is looking at Rolla, looking at our communities, different communities, they have choices between communities. They're not only looking at the rates, but can we provide the services that they need? So that's one key to development. And the other thing I like to point out is the things we do, a lot of times the public may think that we're out leading the charge on different projects, doing different things, siting a well, siting a water tower, whatever it happens to be. The decisions we're making usually are made relative to decisions made by this body. So if the city council is talking about growth to the west, we're looking at, well, what facilities would we need to the west of Rolla, make sure we can handle that growth, supply that growth when the time comes. Same thing if it looked, we're going to expand the industrial park. We're thinking about what will it take for us to support additional growth in the industrial park, or those types of things. So usually we're not the nose of the dog, we're the tail, but we're trying to make sure what we're doing is in preparation for what may come in the future. Another thing that comes up a lot is service availability fees and the commodity charges. Again, just a little bit of information. about this. The service availability fee, we have that on both sides. I think the sewer department has recently instituted a service availability fee. Basically, it's designed, and doesn't completely do this, but it's designed to recover our fixed expenses common to all customers, no matter how much they use, in the same rate class. So, for example, and I think I have some examples. Minimum system required to supply the service, our accounting department, customer service, the meter reading, servicemen, troublemen, engineering, postage, power line, all those types of things. Whether you're a one-person family living in an apartment, your Hartman or your Phelps Health or whoever, if you call in, you expect the same level of service no matter how much you use or who you are. And that's what we try to provide. A lot of that service availability fee is designed to provide a lot of that service, regardless of how much you use. Now again, it's based on classes, but generally that's the idea behind the service availability fee, is trying to recover some of those fixed costs. That's a whole mouthful, but that kind of gets me to where we do this comparative rates. Again, I said we'll go out in about a 60-mile radius from Rolla. It's a little arbitrary, but we use that radius to make sure we capture a lot of communities in the area. Plus, on the electric side, we capture co-ops, an IOU, Ameren, plus a lot of our municipal cities in the area. So it tries to give us a representative sample in the area of how we compare. And again, I've just got 3 columns. We've been doing this now for 6 or 7 years, so we got more information. We have used historically in the past a measure of 5,000 gallons. That has changed probably over the last 6 or 7 years, that consumers are using less water. And I think I've mentioned that at the City Council before. They're using less water. So next year, when we do the study, we'll be doing this at 4,000 gallons. Does not significantly change the stacking order that you'll see here, but that information is available. And again, if you look at less than 2019, for 5,000 gallons of water, Rolla was just under $23 for that commodity. The NC in St. James, St. Robert, a little bit less. And then some of the communities, quite a bit more. I don't have the numbers, but we're in the lower 50% of that group when you look at our water rates. And again, if you look at the water district number 2 of Phelps County, which is immediately surrounding Rolla, they have the highest rates based on that same quantity in the area. So any questions on water rates? I think I will at this point mention the board appointed two members of the board plus management to create a budget committee. They did that back in January. As part of that exercise, we've been reviewing budget, reviewing rates, we've been reviewing anything that goes into our budget, looking at those things. One of the things that we've looking at is rates, and what you'll be seeing in the next month, we'll have a public hearing, and then putting our budget in July. We are looking at eliminating our water cost adjustment in the water department and probably increasing water rates to better cover the capital expenditures of the water main replacements, those kinds of things. So that is going to be a change coming in the next year and possibly 2 years if we do increases over the next 2 years. Any other questions on water? I'll pull up electric. So again, what we've done is captured basically 4 groups here. We have the investor-owned utility within 6 miles, which is Ameren UE. We have 5 co-ops. I think we have 4 of them participated in our survey. We have the MPEP cities. These are former Show Me Power served cities that are now have formed their own power pool called MPEP. And we've got quite a few of those on there. And then the last 5 are the MOPEP cities. That's the power pool that Rolla belongs to. And again, I think you can look, we looked at 700 kilowatt hours, 1,300 and 2,000 is just as some benchmarks. The question we ask the other cities is to provide us with what your rate would be or your total cost, including any service availability fee, commodity charges for these specific breakdowns. And again, I think if you look at this chart, you'll see that we're one of the lowest cost utilities in the 60-mile radius. In fact, I've got older data from 2017. I think of all of the larger cities, there's about 25, 27 larger cities that report data to the federal government. We're in about the top 10 of that group, or lowest 10, should say that differently, the lowest 10 of that group. If you look at us compared to the co-ops on average cost for residential, I think we're better than, I think we're better than probably 80% of the co-ops in the state as far as low-cost energy. And then if you look at the other smaller cities in the state, as all in energy, again, we're in the bottom low group of that as well. So I think we're doing well, very well as providing low-cost energy to our consumers. And again, another thing I'll point out, again, this is something also the board's looking at as far as rates go, different scenario than on the water side. Here we are looking at increasing service, eliminating power cost adjustment, and we're looking at increasing our service availability fees slightly, but we're looking at lowering our energy rates substantially. And the net effect of that is additional rate relief beyond the discounts that we're providing today in the energy, which actually overwhelms what we're doing on the water side. So the net effect overall will be reduced.
So right now, we have base rates and then there's a credit.
A credit, yeah, a power cost adjustment or water cost adjustment, correct.
So on the power, are you still gonna do both? You're gonna drop the base rate and keep this other?
We're eliminating power cost adjustment.
Okay, so
That
just do it.
is the recommendation. It's still subject to board approval, but that's the recommendation. But we're looking at lowering the actual rate below what that credit would have been.
Okay, in the monthly packet that I read the other day, there was a reference there that the city's cost, if all this goes through, is gonna go up $60,000.
That's correct.
What is that about?
So what we're looking at is we're also reviewing, and I think that number is gonna change. Again, that's an estimate.
It's gonna go down, I hope.
Probably will change. But what I tried to look at is if we make these rate changes, okay, well, how does that affect the power bill, water bill at the center? How does it affect it at South Plant on a high level? So how do these rate changes of lowering rates, lowering electric rates, or increasing our water rates, how does that affect the city bills that we send the city? Then in addition, we looked at if we lower rates for the whole town on electric side, how does that affect pilot that we're collecting from our customers and giving? And the net effect of looking at all those factors was about a $60,000 increase. We actually met with John, kind of to give him a highlight of what we're looking at. And so he knows kind of what the potential impact could be. And again, I think, as John would say,
I don't need to get in the weeds, but is that increase coming, let's say, in the streetlights that has a dedicated revenue stream, or it's gonna come a loss on the pilot, which will be a problem? Where is that $60,000 coming from?
it's a combination of everything.
Yeah, but the loss of pilot is not an insignificant portion of that. I mean, we're gonna have some savings to the general fund as well, but.
Right. I think if I were to guess, I'd say you're gonna have some departments who are gonna benefit. I think the general fund will probably be the.
Rodney, not to put you on the spot, but that general fund can't take a hit.
And I was at your meeting.
What's that?
I was at.
I know, I'm just, in case you were dozing off.
No, I was not
Okay.
dozing off.
Enough said, thank you.
Right. And so we that information has been shared with the board as well. When we presented the recommendations to the board, they're very much aware of that situation as well.
What's the slight raise?
Same thing.
Right now, what's been proposed is going on the residential side for electric, going to $24 from $20. On the water side not making any
You're
change.
only supposed to go up so far on this availability fee.
Yeah, on our power, the both the water cost of service study and the electric cost of service, we'll talk about the electric one, when that was done several years ago, $24 was about where that number was. And that was, we did those, did those studies, it's probably been 6-7 years ago. So, and we know, I'm aware of your concerns. That's right.
And I think you keep hanging in there, and that becomes a permanent fee, and you keep raising that. That hangs in there all the time.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does, yeah.
The service availability fee will always be permanent.
I bet you bounced that from day one, Luke.
I know, just saying. It's-
But you jump when you
I think
jump
Rodney's been very transparent about it. It's not something
When you
that's going
jump at 300%, that's a pretty good jump for the first time.
So, but that, And again, taking that into effect with the reduction that we're looking at, I think the net effect is substantial, but it does, like I said, we understand it affects the customers differently. No different than the conversation with the city. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm on a different topic, but you still have more, is that right, or no?
What's that?
Do you have more to go, or is that?
No, that is it.
Oh.
Next slide is questions.
I heard you mention it, but, were you gonna get any more into the grain belt in terms of that, or,
Just the fact that I think that if we expect in the next legislative session, which will be in next January, we expect probably more activity, depending on what the developer has got going by that time. So,
if it has an awful lot going, it would be harder for them to.
it becomes harder the more they can get done, the more they can accomplish in this 6-month time period.
There's no other questions. Ronnie, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Ronnie. Next item is an ordinance rezoning 601 East 10th Street from R3 to C0. CO.
Yes, good evening. This is a request to rezone lots 5 through 8, Block 19 Holloway FRC, which is currently configured, and the parcel is identified with the Phelps County Assessor as the account number 6652, and it has the address of 601 East 10th Street from multifamily R3 to office zoning district CO. The applicant is Allergy and Asthma Consultants, who own the parcel. The subject parcel is approximately 0.58 acres in size. It's 255 foot deep and 100 foot wide approximately. The lot is currently vacant. All area requirements for the office zoning are met, and the future land use map shows that the two parcels along 10th Street as neighborhood commercial, and the two little sections to the rear along 11th Street as medium to high density residential. The applicant proposes to amend his zoning map to CO so that he can, so that they can apply for a permit possibly and expand their business, which is across Maple Street. The surrounding subject parcels to the north and east are zoned R3, and they have a mixed single-family and multifamily uses on them. No protest or petitions have been filed with the community. We did have a public hearing at the last council meeting. There was some concern about some water issues. And then there was, during a public hearing at the P&Z, one gentleman was concerned about a newborn baby that was coming along for noise that possibly would be disturbing for the child. The Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously voted to recommend this approval, and the action request from City Council is conduct a final reading and to propose the zone of 0.58 acres known as 601 East 10th Street from multifamily district R3 to CO. And I'll try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve? Jimmy Dale?
What'd you find out on the water situation?
We've walked a lot. We had staff walk a lot. It's quite a bit lower than the neighboring property. It sets, from the ice, sets quite a bit high. And it does appear that the rear of her lot is wet. Now, like I say, I don't want to assume anything, but it seems impossible for water in the low-lying area to force its way up the hill and come out. So quite possibly the problem may be up above. I don't know. I know it's a low-lying area. It seems, the water seems to kind of lay down in that area, but talking to Public Works, there is a storm drain there, and they will be required to take care of their on-site water once they develop.
Steve, where's the storm drain?
I think it's on the south west corner, is that correct?
Is it on 11th Street?
I think it's
on 11th.
It's on 11th?
Yeah, it's right kind of outside
Okay.
the house next to it there.
Okay. Yeah.
That was that's the like little strain in the street I saw.
Yeah.
So you're saying the builders or developers going to have to take the water that may accumulate in that low spot and get it to that storm sewer?
I mean, I don't know what their plans are, but I definitely know that they're probably going to have to build the lot up in order to do anything there. 'Cause it
So the
is-
natural flow of the water will then
would
go.
then go, they'd be responsible for taking care of it to the
Okay.
storm sewer, yeah.
Any other questions by council? John?
Yeah, does that, I was kind of looking at it as I was driving by, and I remember Chad Seard mentioned something about, back in the day, there was some sort of creek that ran through there. And I wondered if we had a storm sewer that went under 10th through, maybe under the soccer field or somehow into that drainage on through the baseball field. I mean, is it that extensive? Is that where that all goes? I'm just curious.
I don't know, maybe.
Yes. Okay. So really, there is water that comes off that neighborhood and works its way possibly through that. So we're set up if there is a water issue to take care of that. Okay, thank you.
I think it's mostly answered, but there's not really any liability in the city taking this on. I mean, not taking it on, but rezoning that or allowing them to do what they're doing. There's no liability if they have an issue or anything like that, right?
Right now, if somebody came in and wanted to put multifamily apartments there, it's zoned R3, we can allow them to do
They
it.
could, right?
Did that answer your question?
I think so. I mean, yeah.
There's no other questions? Can we have the final reading?
An ordinance approving the rezoning of 601 East 10th Street from R3 zoning to CO zoning, City of Rolla, Phelps County, Missouri.
Second.
So motion made and second, roll call vote, please.
Mush,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Everly,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
11 A's.
I'm sorry, did it pass, Carol?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
11 A's.
Next item is an ordinance enacting Article 6 of Chapter 31 pertaining to trees. Lloyd?
So I'm here before you tonight to ask for a second and final reading of our tree ordinance, which, just a refresher, is one of our 4 standards that we need to become a Tree City USA. We made 2 revisions from the first, and I highlighted that for the packet for you. One has to do with addition of tree plantings relative to having a selection from our public tree list. So they would be under power lines, so that those are actually under the recommendations would only go to a max height, so there would not be a problem with that. And the second was really just a clarification on a reference point within the ordinance itself that was from one of the first earlier revisions. So those are the 2 changes from the initial. The second part, as we talked about, the standard for us being a Tree City USA has to do with the Parks Board serving as a tree board. And I said they accepted that responsibility, and the other 2 have to do with us putting together an annual budget showing that we have a $2 per capita to qualify that we're putting that much investment into our tree maintenance and management. And the other one just being the Arbor Day proclamation and celebration, which we can do in concert and collaboration with schools. Questions?
David?
2 quick ones. One is, when officially do we complete the 4 steps, in the sense that, once we do the Arbor Day proclamation and all those things, then we kind of officially become Tree City, or do you
When
know?
could we apply, I think is what you're
Oh,
trying to...
we apply,
Yeah,
okay.
when can we
Yeah,
apply?
once we get each of those 4
Gotcha.
pieces done, so the mayor actually has to do a proclamation for Arbor Day.
Sure.
And we have to do that process. The other has to do with paperwork. We will have to present to you, John can correct me if I'm wrong, but we will have to make a change in the Parks Advisory Commission ordinance relative to we're expanding based on their recommendation, which you heard was adding a 6th member, so we will have to make that change in the ordinance, and also giving them the ability to function as a tree board, so we will have to add that language to the ordinance as well.
Perfect. And just as a time frame, when do you expect that sixth person to be added over the next couple months, or is there just have an idea of when that happens?
I think we bring the ordinance back the next meeting.
Okay.
I mean, there's no compelling reason not to.
With a suggestion of who would be on the board, or not quite to that stage yet?
Well, I think we gotta adopt it first, but we can run parallel.
I mean,
But you're gonna
I'm
have to
not
have
trying
two
to rush
readings,
it. I was just
right?
curious.
Yeah, so, but still two steps, so certainly by the
beginning of
second one, yeah.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
How much per capita are we currently spending on this?
Oh, I think between what RMU, Public Works, and the Parks does, we think we're well over that. Ballpark, Steve, would it be fair to say we probably $3, $4 per capita?
So you wouldn't expect any increase in budget requests with this proclamation?
Not necessarily, no, and I think what this also does is make us eligible for trim grants, which would then provide a funding mechanism to pay for additional training of staff. Also would make us available to do inventory of our trees if we decided to go that route in terms of safety and those kind of things, and health of our forestry. It helps us manage it. So it really puts us in a position to do more. I don't know that I really see us doing a whole lot more. I mean, we're really pretty aggressive. When I met with the Davie Resource Group, which does about 8 or 9 different cities in Missouri in this region, similar in size to us, and they do tree inventories, shared with them kind of some of the stuff that we were doing, not just in parks, but public works in terms of planning. We are well positioned according to them, and they do this stuff. That's what they do. So in terms of what we spend and what we're already allocating in terms of dollars within those 3 entities, I think I don't really see us having to do more per se, but if we choose to do that, for instance, like the tree inventory, if we become a Tree City USA, then that would be applied to doing a tree inventory, which would basically allow us to get 75% of that cost paid for by the grant, so we would have to come up with 25% matching money. And that's not to say that we would do it, but it gives us a greater opportunity to do things like that.
What is a tree inventory?
Well, it's basically a process where you say arbitrary number of how many trees that you want to identify and manage within your urban forestry in this case. So, and that depends on how we want to narrowly write that proposal, if that's what we want to do. But for instance, one option would be to basically rank the trees in our right-of-ways and our parks and along our streets in terms of the health of the tree and long-term safety. So they rank them on a scale of 1 to 4. It's like this 4 is like this tree is imminently dying and could be a threat to, fall over in the street or whatever, to this tree is dead and you need to remove it right away, to the tree that's, very healthy or still doing pretty good. So you can write it such a way as that you focus on the health. And if I were to recommend it, that's how I would see us going forward if we did a tree inventory. But it helps you manage that in terms of really the safety aspect, so you can rank your trees and you can kind of select which ones you're doing. Several of the cities that are doing that are kind of doing it like, if I remember right, Warrensburg is doing it in stages, so they're doing certain parts of the city and they do an inventory of this area on a rotational basis each year. So that just gives us the opportunity to do things like that if we choose to do that.
Right, early on, when I asked about the impact on the budget, the answer I got from John was that no problem, RMU alone would spend more than enough to meet the requirement. And originally I lobbied hard to get RMU more prominent in here, and they're not as prominent, but I don't hear you mention that when you answered that question. You talk about the parks, you talk about public works, but take me back to RMU. I thought that's where the real significant money is being spent on trees.
In terms of tree maintenance, pruning, and those kind of things, yes. And every dollar that they spend on that would be part going toward this $2 per capita. Very true. Yes. The difference between parks and streets in RMU. RMU doesn't have a tree planting campaign. We do, and Public Works does.
Okay, so the
So
budget
that's the
has
difference.
components. It has a
Correct.
component for maintenance, the component for planting.
Right.
Okay, thank
And
you.
what we really have to get to is the $40,000 total.
Yeah.
And RMU's maintenance program virtually handles that.
That's all
Yeah,
I'm-
Yeah.
warm and fuzzy. Daniel?
I just want to say I never thought about that from an inclement weather standpoint, that would help us get a hold of some of that issue too, which we deal with some pretty crazy weather out here, and being able to get those trees under control before that kind of weather hits is really beneficial. Really what I want to say though is that this has been a lot of work on you guys, and I'm just really thankful that you guys have put in hours, and Flo, you've really steered this ship, and I'm just grateful. I really want to say thank you to you and your
Appreciate that.
staff.
Any other questions? If not, can we have the, I need a motion to amend to reflect the two changes that Floyd mentioned.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Can we have the final reading of the amended ordinance?
An ordinance enacting Article 7, Chapter 31, Parks and Recreation of the Rolla City Code regulating the planting, maintenance, and removal of trees, shrubs, and other plants on city property in Rolla, Missouri.
Move to propose ordinance pass?
Second.
Motion made in second. Roll call vote.
Roder,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Mush.
Yes.
11 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is an ordinance amending section 2789 of the city code pertaining to stop intersection. Okay. Go
So
ahead.
prior to the last meeting, we'd received a request of Phelps Health to create a new stop condition on 11th Street. Council had the first reading last meeting. We've attached the ordinance and a map depicting the change. This time I'll take any questions.
If there's no questions for Darren, can we have the final reading?
An ordinance amending Section 27-89 of the General Ordinances of the City of Rolla, Missouri, known as the Code of the City of Rolla, Missouri, pertaining to stop intersections.
Second.
Motion made in second. Roll call vote.
Jones,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
11 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Item E is being pulled from the agenda. We've got a little more work to do on that. Item F, ordinance authorizing me to enter into an agreement with Javiation.
We've got the final reading of the ordinance for your consideration tonight. This is design services for some rehabilitation work at the runway 422 Royal National Airport. Design fee services $176,610.13, and we did have that fee checked independently by a firm out of Colorado to make sure it was in line with what the industry charges for this sort of work, and it's well within those limits.
Any questions for Steve? If not, can we have the final reading?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Javiation Incorporated for consulting services.
Move to propose ordinance pass.
Second.
Motion made in second. Roll call vote.
Allen,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
is that a yes?
Yes.
The one on Javiation.
Okay. Skipped one, did we?
Yeah, we did. We pulled it off the agenda.
Okay. Wasn't marked on mine, though.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Schott, Jones,
Yes.
11 ayes.
Which is approved. The next one is authorizing me to enter into an agreement with Pierce Asphalt for project 492.
At the last meeting, we awarded the bid to Pierce Asphalt for some work done in parks and at the center. We also had the first reading ordinance. final reading tonight for your consideration.
Any questions for Steve? If not, is there a motion?
Second.
Motion made in second. Roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Final reading.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Pierce Asphalt LLC for 2019 parking lot overlays, project number 492.
Second.
Motion made in second. Roll call vote.
Kraft,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Bruder,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Eberly.
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
11 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Steve, before we go to new business, we have some guests here, so I'd like to, prior to going into new business, talk about the fiscal transaction, meaning the insurance. So if you can- So the item we have is a resolution authorizing me to execute a two-year, oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yep.
A two-year rate lock letter with Travelers. John?
Thank you, Mayor. Let me introduce some folks that have been working with us for, Jeff, I'm going to guess a year and a half. Jeff Cronlister and Jane Edley with Alice Akers Arney, and Tom Adams is with Travelers, who is the underwriter under the proposal. And so you might recall, I don't know, maybe 90 days ago, we brought to you this idea of leaving Myrma after almost 40 years and being very satisfied with the work of Myrma and a great relationship. RMU was one of the key members in getting that organization started. It was a pool of risk of municipal entities at a time when the market had sort of dried up and sort of left a lot of the private utilities or public utilities hanging. So Myrma's been a great partner, but we also recognize that we are the largest of their many organizations, and that's us and Fulton and Arnold are the three biggest. Lots of very small organizations, and the city had never taken an opportunity to put the time and effort into feeling out the market to see whether or not there was some cost savings there. So as you recall, we brought that to council, and you authorized us to go out with that, but that required us giving notice to Myrma of a termination of our coverage as of June 30th. We did send proposals out to about a dozen firms who had contacted us over the years interested in it. Almost all of them responded to us and said, some of the responses were everything from, we're not really sure Rolla's really leaving Myrma, to we just don't know enough about your package and the amount of work we're going to have to put into to put a competitive proposal together. We're going to wait and see how this goes over the next couple of years. And some just recognizing that, quite frankly, Travelers is one of the primary underwriters, and when they were sort of locked in with a proposal with Alice Akers Arney, I think they were willing to just sort of say, we're going to just pass this time around. So we did open two full proposals from Alice Akers Arney and a second one from Connell Insurance that partnered with First State Community Bank's insurance program. The proposals were interesting. As we thought, we were going to see a really significant savings through the Travelers underwritten program, and that came in at about $613,000. In the budget appropriation, I put $620,000 plus and minus because we're still looking at and met with their team last week with our folks, and we're looking at whether the bonds are properly covered on our employees, whether we want to pick up some properties that are in floodplains and what the differences would be. We'll update our entire equipment listing and vehicle listing, so all of that can affect premium. But we were very thrilled to see that proposal, and not surprising, we're going to be seeing about $150,000 savings on our cost. That has a 2-year program, so there is a rate lock for year 2, 5%, not to exceed 5%, subject to the performance of the group, not including work comp at under 40%, and working together collaboratively to manage our risk, as we are confident that we will do very effectively with this team. The other group, Connell Insurance, was very interested, but they sort of found the same thing. They were struggling to find a lot of underwriters that were willing to spend the time it was going to take to really put these numbers together in a community who has not been out to bid in almost 40 years. And so Connell, who I'm certain is a very qualified brokering outfit, I think is going to show that same interest in year 2, 3, 5 when we sort of roll this back over. My thought is we're looking at this as a 3 to 5 year relationship. I don't think this is something we want to do every year. It's a tremendous amount of work on our part. It's a tremendous amount of work of the underwriters and the brokers' parts as well. However, if the council approves this, then they will be our partner for at least the next 2 years. So I'm so gracious that these experts have been able to come down, but I know in the sake of time, we didn't need to go through the whole proposal. I'll go over in your packet, and it's on page 7A5, which shows the pricing broken out by the various coverages that we specified, but more importantly, on pages 7A6, 7, 8, 9, this is sort of a matched up comparison of Murmur coverages with the program under travelers, and then a little reference to MEM, which is the second alternative on the work comp carrier program only. And in almost all cases, the coverage is actually enhanced under travelers. Biggest reason because of the umbrella policy that's put in place that, and correct me, it's $5 million umbrella. Under the Murmur pool, there's not an umbrella package. They have a total coverage, but it includes all 80 members of the Murmur pool. So that number is sacrificed by a 80-member pool. If we were all hit with the same tornado, would dramatically impact that. So the $5 million umbrella coverage provides us a lot of enhanced coverage almost across the board. And we went through detailed on all of those sections with all of our staff. And you know, there's some things that we lose. We do lose the grant. If you remember, we get a grant for $2,000 or $3,000 a year. The state law prohibits a rebate or a grant program like that. They're not able to participate in accreditation, but they do share lots of their best practices, a lot of training opportunities. They'll still provide police and fire pursuit policies, all kinds of things on the human resources side. So we're very confident in the support that we're going to be receiving from this particular team. So they're here for any questions. We'll be spending a lot more time with them over the next month as we get this coverage in place for a July 1 effective date. But we're prepared to recommend a resolution that authorizes the mayor to engage in that 2-year lock program.
Any questions for John? Jody? Oh, David.
Two quick ones. So from going to the first and second year, there's a chance we could raise as much as 5%, but not necessarily. It depends on how we perform with our
With a loss ratio.
Loss ratio, okay.
Yeah.
And then after the second year, there's no guarantee, just want to, no guarantee of what it would be a renegotiation. If it seems reasonable, we would then continue hopefully for 3, 4, 5 years if it continues to look reasonable for us. Is that correct?
That's the plan,
Okay.
yes.
And then, just curious about the 5 million umbrella, that's per incident or per total per year?
I'll defer to the experts. Yeah, if you wouldn't. So Tom Adams from Travelers.
Thank you.
The 5 million umbrella is a additional $5 million limit over all of the underlying liability policies. That's general liability, auto liability, law enforcement liability, employment practices liability, and public officials liability. And that 5 million limit is per occurrence, and it's an annual aggregate. So it couldn't be more than 5 million in any one year, but then the next year that would be reinstated again.
Right, so if you had, of those departments you mentioned, the automotive in each one, if you, let's say you had 1.5 million for some reason on each one of them, when you hit 5 million total on any conglomeration of that, it would be the city, from there it would be the...
No, not exactly. We've got, for each separate liability coverage, there's a separate limit. So there's a separate limit for general liability, which is the goofy 2.8 million, whatever the sovereign immunity limit is this year. You have that same 2.8 million for auto, separate limit just for auto.
Right.
The public officials, I think, is 1 million, 2 million, employment practices, 1 million, 2 million aggregate, and then the 5 million sits on top of that. So, yeah, so you would have that primary limit of 2.8 million plus an additional 5 million.
And let's pretend in 2 departments you went over 2.8 million to the point of 3 million each. At the 5 million mark of the umbrella, you'd then be on the other 1 million.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And then you would be on the hook, if I follow that right, I think for like 1 million.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
yeah,
That's right.
But keep in mind, you've never had that before.
Right.
You've never even had the 5 million before.
Thank you.
So bad things can happen. I always get asked, what's the maximum limit we should buy? My answer is, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? I'll tell you. But 5 million's a good start.
Thank you.
Daniel?
So my only question, And you may have already clarified this. So we have the 2-year lock letter, and then at what point before that 2-year mark will we start renegotiations?
That's really kind of up to you and Allison Acres. What I would hope would be the case is that our first year we go through, you guys perform admirably. We're well below that 40% loss ratio number. So your first year renewal, your second year of coverage, you're locked into that maximum rate increase of 5%. And even though we put that in there, that doesn't mean you're going to get it. It's just saying that's the maximum that we can take if you perform under that loss ratio. And so when we start talking about the third year, I would say the time to start having those discussions is probably shortly after the first of the year. So you have plenty of time to kind of see what's going on, what's the cost going to be, how are you going to budget for this?
I do want to point out that I just want to say this just to make myself maybe feel a little bit better, but I think some of the issues that we're dealing with at the city in regards to pay, overstaffing, things like that, I think could possibly affect things like injuries and things like that. So I just want to...
Say that again, I didn't follow that.
I think one of the things that we face here in Rolla is the fact that we're having some issues with staffing, with police, things like that. I feel that those folks are going to be looking at, if we don't fix these staffing issues, a lot of overworking, a lot of overtime, which brings in things like mistakes, accidents, things like that. So it's great what's happening tonight, but what I want to say is I think that there's a cost we're not looking at, and I think that that's something that's going to come to fruition soon enough.
Most of those concerns, if I'm hearing you correctly, probably fall under the workers' compensation coverages, the injury to workers. And you share a lot of common problems we're seeing industry-wide in that we've got an aging workforce, more susceptible to injury. When they are injured, it takes longer to heal, to get them back to work. That's just kind of the society, that's what we've got these days. The workers' comp coverage is really the more fluid and probably the most volatile price-wise of all the coverages that we're talking about. And it truly does depend a lot on your individual performance, how you perform your losses as just the city of Rolla. We're not concerned about 79 other members. We're just concerned about how you perform. And if you perform well, then your work comp premium should stay in line. We're here to help achieve that with loss control training, safety training, in conjunction with Allison Acres to make sure you do the best job you can do to protect your employees. That's why we're here. We don't want to see your employees injured. You don't want to see your employees injured. But when they are, we want to get them treated as quickly and efficiently as possible and back to work as quickly as possible.
We just saved $150,000. We could just throw that towards that problem, right?
You saved $150,000 because you already do a good job compared to a lot of cities. And you had not been out to the market in over 30 years to see what other options are out there. And I jokingly say that, not so much jokingly, but true, that when you're in a pool, you don't want to be the big fish in a little pond. That you end up eventually paying more than your fair share. And I think that's exactly what's happened with the city of Rolla over the years. So we're happy to be able to partner with you, hopefully for a long-term relationship. And if there's other questions, I'll do my best to answer.
David?
I think everything that you've explained to us makes complete sense, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify maybe what I'm understanding Daniel was saying.
Sure.
Which is more to the council here, that if we put our workforce under stress by having positions unfilled and asking people to do extra time, work, energy, overtime, that kind of thing, we are setting ourselves up for potential extra likelihood for an expensive incident because people are under stress and in those situations. So I think anything we can do to reduce those is not only going to help us not have issues and get anybody hurt, but it's also going to help us keep our insurance down the second year and then the years after. So I think that's all I'm seeing.
David, management needs to step up. You know, you're right, but, you know, accidents aren't a foregone conclusion. I work for a company that budgets for 0 accidents.
Right.
Philosophically, we don't accept that premise that people are going to get hurt.
Of course.
So I think the message that you're making as well goes to city management to say, we got to double our efforts in terms of employee safety.
Of course, and I think my main point was things like some of our departments that are understaffed, and we could use the police department as one example where this is an example across the board. There's a lot of communities having trouble getting fully staffed police departments, which sets you up for a little more risk if you have an incident or a call and you can't respond to officers. That could create something where you have a lawsuit or an issue.
Absolutely.
And I think for us, we need to prioritize things like that, especially within our police force. And if that means jumping the pay a bit or doing whatever it means to really make sure that we have that, that's the main thing I was hitting on. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? If not, can we read the resolution? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a 2-year rate lock letter with travelers.
Second.
That's a resolution. All in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Moving on to new business. Steve, the first one is to close Cedar Street and early off.
We've had a request from Rolla Wallace from Brewer Science. They're wanting to host a reception for an event at the Ozark Actors Theater on Cedar Street on August 17th. They're planning on closing that block. They're going to have a tent, have wine by the glass and hors d'oeuvres, appetizers. We've done this in the past, and it's not been a problem. In addition to the council approval tonight, we will require that they get a liability insurance policy, and that they also get a city liquor license for that. I think Loretta's here tonight. I'd like to address the council as well.
I have a flyer. Do we want to share? Sure. Is that how it goes, or do we need to get it away? Is it upside down?
Can we get it over here?
Okay. Yes, we would like to do basically the same thing we did last year. We closed a section of Cedar Street right outside the Ozark Actors Theater, and we had party professionals put up a tent, and we had tables and chairs under there, and we had appetizers for people that were going to this concert, and they could purchase wine by the glass from Merrimack Vineyard Winery. And it was only open to people that were going to the concert. It was a really lovely evening, and matter of fact, Daniel Jones came by on his scooter to chat with us while we were putting the tent up. It was a nice evening. The musicians, they are going to be guests in our community. The musicians are from Germany, except for Eugenia Zuckerman. She's flying in from New York for this concert. So it's a nice evening, and it's sponsored by Brewer Science.
Thank you. Any questions? Looking forward to it.
Yeah, sounds great.
I love it when we do stuff like this. I love closing streets down. It makes me happy.
It went very well, but it took a team. I'm just going to say, this group was wonderful to work with. Everybody went out of their way to make it easy for me. I'm not an expert at permits, but John Butts helped me get through this. Steve was an excellent resource, so it does take a great team to make good things happen. So I appreciate that.
Now, did John ask if he could play guitar up there, or not with this group?
Cameo appearance,
These
maybe.
folks are fantastic.
Thank you, Rev. Is there a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next item is an ordinance amending section 2792, recording to parking on 9th Street.
It was better if you have light snacks, Steve.
At the last council meeting, Councilman Williams asked us to contact the owner of the house at the city parking lot off of 9th Street. That's Brooks Reed. I've had conversations in the past with Brooks about taking parking off of 9th Street, and I told him I didn't think it was probably going to be all that popular when I did take the parking off, but I'd like for him to put it in writing so that I could break it to council on his behalf. We never did get that in writing, but he did contact me, so I went ahead and put it on the agenda. It's kind of I could let Mr. Reed explain it, but related to me, he's got kind of a 3-tier request. He'd like to take the parking off of all of 9th Street, say there is no parking from Main on 9th Street on the north side all the way to 63. He'd like to see it on that block as well. If that's not possible, he'd like to have the parking spot that's directly east of his driveway to his house, which is right here, taken out. If that's not possible, then perhaps maybe in the parking lot at this location here. The problem is around backing out of the driveway. It's obviously hard to back out of your driveway on a busy street when there's cars parked on it. The property does have an extra wide driveway, and I suggest that perhaps they need to back into their driveway rather than try to back out of it. Better to back in than maybe see that. So I'll let Mr. Reed, he's here if you'd like to hear from him. I can't really be supportive of taking off parking in the downtown area unless it's just absolutely necessary. And I think this could be handled with just backing into the driveway.
Downtown parking spots are precious right now.
Yes.
Mr. Reed, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I don't live in a house yet. I really only bought it. Everybody wondered why I bought it. I said, Bill, just in case my wife kicks me out of the house, I have a place to live. So, but right now I'm leasing it out to 2 senior students at the university. They're software engineers. But into the driveway, it's straight in. There's no turnaround or anything. You've got to back out into 9th Street, and the only other way would be to back into that, to pull out, because it's hard to see. People coming down, there's a stop sign at 10th Street and at 8th Street, but not at 9th Street. And people, when they stop up at 10th Street, you got the big trucks coming down through there, and they turn around. I pulled out one day right after I bought it, and I started to turn out, backed out to go turn to Rolla Street. Somebody came around Rolla Street, turned right, going like a bat, and damn near hit me. I hit brakes, and if he hadn't hit his brakes, we'd have had a head-to-head collision there. And there's also, in the summertime, right now, we've got a shrub, big tree in the corner of the corner of Rolla Street and 9th Street there. And then there's one right next to my building that's a big tree. And there's other shrubbery along Rolla Street. It's hard to actually see from our driveway people coming down Rolla Street. But some of them come around there fast. And that street is a little narrow right there, and there's no parking at all from Main Street all the way down to 63. And the 2 parking lots there where the university has the 2 parking lots. And there's a parking lot where my building is. And I can't believe a lot of people that pull out of there of an evening after 5 o'clock or so, turning right, you have some parking, about three cars can park there, and then one right in front of the building. And it's an obstruction. And Main Street is a 2-way street, and you can park on either side of the street there by the church and up towards the university. And the cars there really block, unless you were, if I had a big truck setting up high, you could see over them. But I can't believe other people pulling out that parking lot, that there's not going to be an accident there someday. And since there's no parking from Main Street all the way down to 63, it would be one right in front of the house, and then about 3 parking spaces there. With the way that Main Street is 2-way and Rolla is 1-way, and people come down there pretty fast and turn sharply, and it's really an obstruction. No one's lived in that house for many, many years.
It was refurbished, and I bought it. And I don't plan on tearing it down, but I've had a couple of people approach me that wanted to buy it, and I think they were gonna tear it down and put a high-rise up there. And as long as I'm alive, it's not gonna be sold. It's gonna be like it is. And I'm going to lease it. And I think we should have, I know a couple of months or so ago, there was a lot of hullabaloo with the mission and all the parking and that. And I agree, you need parking along the street because we do have limited. That parking lot, there's a waiting list of about 80 people trying to get into that parking lot compared to some of the others. Because it's ideal for downtown there.
Okay, just a point of clarification, and if you might have gone by there and noticed it, we do have the curbs painted yellow at the driveways on both sides of this. So, Brooks, there's room for probably just one car right in front of the house, or could somebody maybe
One
squeeze
right
two in
front of
there?
the house, right at the driveway, and then another one, there's for 2 cars to drive into the parking lot, and then there's 3, about room for 3 cars up Main Street.
Yeah, but really the
Looking
bigger
either
concern
way.
is the westbound traffic on.
The westbound.
On 9th
you
Street.
turn west, and then coming down, there's a lot of people coming up north on Main Street and turn in there too. And some of them come around there pretty good lick. And you don't have a heck of a
I mean,
lot.
just a suggestion, and I think this was one of the options Steve laid out, is just to take that one spot out in front of the house, which would allow you to at least see what is on westbound traffic on the 9th Street, but that's just for consideration.
In the wintertime, it's not so bad, but the landscaping along Rolla Street there, and there's a big tree right on the corner of Rolla Street and 9th, and there's one right next to our house there. And
That
I kind of keep it
corner of Rolla
trimmed a
Street,
bit.
9th
so
Street is an obstruction.
Is
I
that the
mean,
picture
you
that's
can't
on
see
the
until
right?
you-
That the tree we're talking about?
Yes.
And whose tree is that?
It's a city tree, city parking.
One of Floyd's?
I guess we can give it to Floyd, yeah.
Is it a qualified tree?
Well, that tree is a bald cypress, I believe, so it's gonna grow to be, 100-plus feet at some point. But it could be trimmed up.
Yeah, that's what I was
I
saying.
mean, it's not like it would not obstruct the view other than the trunk at that point. They're very nice trees. I think it's very well landscaped, and I'd hate to see the landscaping. That's the one thing that makes that parking lot look decent. Otherwise, it's an asphalt wasteland.
And most people,
And I parked in that parking lot for, 5, 6 years, so. But I can see your point, sir, that it is a little bit, people do go too fast on 9th Street.
and most of them come out at the
And there are a lot of
driver there on
accidents.
the west side of the house.
Yeah, there are a lot of accidents
They
on
come
Rolla
down.
Street and 9th, and also on Main Street and 9th. But I think that's more of a function of the way people drive and less a function of the brush or the trees. People just drive carelessly, I think.
So what is
But that-
council's pleasure on this? To pursue it? Consider an alternative? Take no action?
How's the alternative of
It-
having your students back?
I'm sorry?
How is the alternative of having your students back in there considered for them? Are
Well,
they okay with that?
You'd have to, in the street and back in.
Right.
And whatever. But if I was living there, I could do that. But, I'm leasing.
Software
two
engineer
gen-
can't?
Two gentlemen. And,
We can do a class or something.
It's just easier to pull out.
But-
It's easier to pull off, so clearly
But
it's
it's
easier to
hard,
pull off.
but you pull in there, and the only way to get out, there's no turnaround or anything there where that little, space, there's no place in the yard unless I tear up the whole yard.
Maybe you could paint the driveway back in only for the students.
Oh, I'm old enough, if I get killed, it's not a big deal, but somebody else could get hurt. And nobody's been there for, the place, it was built in 1924, and I don't know when it was occupied last, but no one had lived in the house for years and years. But I've leased it out to 2 college students, and they're very, they're not wild crazies, and they're very careful. But it is an obstruction, and I think Mr. Williams here agrees. He mentioned something about the big tree that's on the corner.
On the
of
corner is
Rolla
an obstruction.
and,
You have to get
Main
almost
Street.
around the corner before you
Wait.
can see.
In the wintertime, you know, all the shrubbery, you can see through it, but you can't see, if you're sitting in that parking lot there, I mean, in the driveway, you can't really see many cars coming down Rolla Street. And they really come down through there racing, and the motorcycles come down through there, vroom, vroom, vroom.
What if we look at doing what Matthew mentioned in terms of starting with trimming some of the lower branches to see what we can get out of that? Would that make sense? Maybe that already helps us a fair bit.
It needs to be, it's encroaching on the sidewalk now.
I don't know, you can think about it, study it. I mean,
I'd like to go out
I'm
there and
not-
look at it. I
I'm
haven't had a
not,
chance, so.
I just
too.
think
You're not on the tree board.
somebody can get over there.
They're looking for 6 members here.
Yeah. Okay, so does council want to leave it as reassess from the branches?
My only question is, I certainly wouldn't question anything that you're saying tonight, but Steve, you agree that it's a safety hazard?
The what?
Steve, do you agree that it's a safety issue over there?
The tree needs to be trimmed. I don't know that I don't think there's any way you're gonna be able to back out of that driveway. I mean, you can take all the parking off the street, it's still hazardous to back out of a driveway.
So eliminating the
Well,
parking
you've got
doesn't
a little
eliminate the
more room.
situation.
That's a narrow road there, and it's parked on the other side, and it's barely enough room for 2 cars, one coming this way and one coming that way. It's not as wide as most of the other streets.
I would be concerned if we removed the parking, people would drive faster.
Right.
Pardon?
I said I would be concerned if we removed the parking, people would drive faster because they have more room.
Well, if they don't put some speed bumps up or something.
I would literally want to do everything but
I've
move the
seen a
parking.
lot of
We should
coming around
expand the
there,
sidewalk,
woo.
slow people down.
I think we should start with the shrubbery.
Start with the shrubbery?
Yep. Yes.
Absolutely.
A lot of heads, okay. We'll start with the shrubbery. We'll report
We're
back.
just talking about
Okay.
trimming it, right? Not cutting
Yeah.
it down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Using the proper standards.
Yes.
I love
Matt's gonna
Get that
chain
trimmed.
himself to a tree.
it. Might just do it.
Needs the Lorax.
Can we table it?
No, there's a difference between table and setting,
So I would say you need to have
set it aside. Okay, so is there a motion to set this aside?
So moved.
Second.
Is that a roll call vote, or is, what is that?
Voice.
Voice?
This motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next item is an ordinance amending section 2789 pertaining to stop signs.
So at the last council meeting, staff was instructed to review the yield condition at the intersection of Powell and 12th Street near the hospital. While we were reviewing it, we thought it'd be prudent to look at all the yield control intersections in that area. Staff's recommendations, we change all of those yield intersections to stop intersections. We've attached a map and an ordinance depicting that, and staff does recommend approval. So this time I'll take any questions.
I did have, seeing as how I live right there.
Right?
At the private drive, which didn't exist until a couple months ago, is this change yield sign to a stop sign as you're coming out of that private drive? They already have a stop sign there,
I'm aware.
so,
But the ordinance still had it as a yield, so.
okay, well, there wasn't a yield there because it didn't exist. It was just built this past year. So, there was a house there at one
I guess
point.
I'd have to have you show me on the map which one you're talking about.
I'm talking about 13th Street there where it goes into that private drive.
Okay?
Okay, there's a stop sign, or yield sign on the, gosh, that would be east side, but on the west side of it, you've also got a yield sign, but there wasn't any, that was land.
I'll check that one
So-
for the second reading.
Okay.
All right?
Any other questions for Darren? Can we have the first reading?
An ordinance amending section 27-89 of the general ordinances of the city of Rolla, Missouri, known as the Code of the City of Rolla, Missouri, pertaining to stop intersections.
Next item is an ordinance authorizing RMU to execute a contract for sale of real estate.
Thank you, Mayor. For those interested, St. Louis is up 2-1.
Oh, good.
A little over halfway through the second period.
Nice.
All right.
Aren't you paying attention to the meeting?
I'm doing that too. I
Multitasking.
multitasking. All right, so before you is a contract for sale of a property on Old St. James Road. Property the RMU has held for almost 20 years. The board declared this property surplus last year. We went through an exercise. We advertised it in an open solicitation process. The board received bids. They ultimately rejected that first round, went out for a second round, and then started negotiating with higher bidder from that round. Since then, we've negotiated a contract for sale of this property, and this ordinance would allow the general manager of RMU to execute and take that property to a close. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Rod?
And all we're requesting tonight is just the first reading.
Who scored the last goal?
If not, can we have the first reading?
An ordinance authorizing the general manager of Rolla Municipal Utilities to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla a certain contract for sale of real estate with Missouri Southern Seed Corporation.
Moving on to citizen communications, is there anyone that would like to speak to city council?
I'm Frank Furman. I'm a friend of the Rolla Public Library, and for all you late-night people who like to read, we're having a book sale. And Thursday, June 13th, is a members-only night between 5 and 8. You can join at the door. If you're a senior or students, it's $5. Singles are $10. Family are $25 for the year. Otherwise, on Friday, the 14th, we'll be open between 9 a.m. and 7. On Saturday, we'll be open, which is the 15th, between 9 and 2. And then, starting at 2:30, we're going to be having our buck-a-bag sale for as many paperback books that you can get in one of our bags. And we've had some people get 24 books in those bags. So come out, support the library, buy some books. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Father's Day is June 16th, so it'd be a good way to get a Father's Day gift.
Wait, you assume I buy for my father, I might buy just for me.
I go twice a year and I buy a whole lot of books, and it's just great getting a $25 hardback for $1.
Well, I'd like to put it out that my children do need to provide more than a book for Father's Day to me, please. And thank you.
They're at home watching.
No, it's tremendous. Anybody else would like to speak to council?
Carefully.
Mayor, city council comments, there's a couple of appointments. First is Councilperson Matthew Crowe, Councilwoman Tiffany Henry for the City Administrators Review Committee. Is there a motion to appoint them?
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Second is Miss Becky Roberts to fulfill the expiring term of Dr. Ruth Stucker. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Any other council comments?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Go ahead, John.
I think someone may have addressed it. What's going on 63 North, construction-wise, Steve? Is that MoDOT? Yeah. They're, by the donut shop and...
Yeah, it's MoDOT, and they're finally fixing that asphalt that just slides, and so they're redoing that in concrete, I believe, and that triggers then the full ADA improvements on the corners, so that's all.
But are they
MoDOT.
gonna pave over that concrete?
I would think so.
Okay, because that's, yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna build until 63.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Rachel.
So I have a point for, I'm not sure if this is for Darren or Steve. I had a conversation with a constituent this weekend who was talking to me about the sort of Salem Maple intersection there near 5th and 6th, that there used to be lines painted near the stop signs to encourage people to know to stop. And he was just wondering if someone could go take a look, maybe get those lines painted back in. Yeah, you know where the Salem sort of curves into downtown, right? And then you also kind of, he also said kind of 6, how you have the yield there with the stop the one way, and that it might, it's confusing, and he's seen people racing through, and.
It needs to be painted,
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Daniel?
I'd like to say, once again, we've had some incidences over by my ward in, down in that area there, and I just want to say, with what happened down there, we had the shooting incident down there. I just wanted to thank Chief Fagan and not only the police officers at RPD, but every police officer that had anything to do with that. My understanding is it was multiple agencies, right? And I think that that's something that we're leaning on a lot lately, is having to lean on those other agencies and everything. I just want to say thank you to those folks for being able to pitch in where we need them as a city. And I'd like to say thank you, Chief, for the work that you guys are doing over there with the tools that we're able to give you at the time.
Who handles the striping on 72? Is that us or state?
It would be us on the new stretch.
Yeah.
That would be us.
Huh?
That would be city.
We've had several complaints about the striping right there coming off of 63, going up through there. People can't determine what lanes are what.
Yeah, it's a little faded, but we're doing some work in that area, but
So from the intersection of
63
You're down.
up
63
through.
intersection of 72 for the first 100 foot.
Stand over here.
Speak into the microphone.
So the intersection painting is still MoDOT's there. From 63 going up 72, almost Walgreens entrance would still be.
Right by Walgreens up through there.
Yeah.
That's what
That's still
people are
theirs.
complaining about, because they don't know where to drive it up there.
I'll pass that on to MoDOT.
Okay, if
All
you
right.
would.
Yep.
Thank you.
Comments for the go to the order? I've got a couple. One, on the insurance change that we made, there is a tremendous amount of work that city staff put into that. I do want to thank you for the great effort you put in that'll enable us to save the money. The way those circumstances played out, we had to take a leap of faith, and I certainly took a leap of faith supporting you guys before even council did, but I think that leap is based upon the belief that those of us have a lot of confidence in the quality of your work. So I do take that, please take that as a compliment.
Thank you.
The second part is Summerfest. We had great weather, and every year these downtown activities seem to get better and better. So I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of people that participated in planning and arranging that. Great job. Any other comments for the good of the order?
Mayor might just mention the Highway Commission's going to be here this Wednesday, and they'll be at the Hessman Alumni House that afternoon. The mayor's doing a presentation around 2 to 2:30.
About 2 o'clock, there's 3 in a row. Ted Ruth, on behalf of the university, is presenting their wish list, if you will, with some of the changes that they would like. I'm going to give a state of our TDD project and some of the upcoming activities that we have coming down the pike. And then the third one, I believe, is MRPC. And they're going to make a presentation regarding the, what do you call that? TAC. Transportation Advisory. So all 3 should be very informative, and they are limited, so it's not going to be a tremendous amount of time. I think we're all limited to maybe 10 minutes each, but if you can drop in, please do so.
Snacks. One with us.
Hasselman House, 3 o'clock, or 2 o'clock, I'm sorry. It's a full day agenda. So, just so everybody knows, the Missouri Department of Transportation commissions go around the state to have various meetings. through the efforts of city staff and RREC, we lobbied, if you will, to get them to have one of their meetings here in Rolla. So that's certainly not a given, but with the efforts of the university, we make it happen. So whenever you can get those decision makers on your home turf, that's a good thing. Gives us a chance to lobby. Any other comments? David?
I just had a quick question, or not question, quick comment in relation to the Summerfest. And to thank the mayor, he put himself out there for the Optimists in the dunk tank, and apparently he made the most money there, so for them, so thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I spent the most money.
Funny part about it is you still didn't put me in the water. Tell the truth.
You know, the funny part about it is I'm a disabled veteran with a wrecked up shoulder. You're asking too much of me. I passed all that out.
Okay, all right. We do have one item for closed session, and that is a real estate matter, so is there a motion to go into closed session?
Second.
Motion made and second, roll call up.
Eberly,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Bruder,
Yes.
Fish,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Kraft.
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
11 ayes.
You doing all right? Two ladies over here on the right side. Pretty knowledgeable.
Yeah, I can't figure out you know? If they're like the ones that work. Nope, they're not. Okay, there we go. That's locked all the way.
Yes. Closed session, a little bit like, just a couple.
That this was done through the judicial process.